Pressure is mounting for President Biden to respond to a deadly drone strike by Iranian-backed militants that killed 3 U.S. troops and injured dozens more at a base in Jordan. NBC's Courtney Kube has more.
Today, President Biden meeting with his national security team in the Situation Room. Under pressure to respond after an attack the Pentagon says was launched by Iranian-backed militias in which U.S. soldiers were killed. We've now learned the names of the 3 fallen troops. 46-year-old Sergeant William Jerome Rivers, 23-year-old Specialist Brianna Alexandria Moffett, whose family described her as a very loving person, a very giving person. She loved life. And 24-year-old Specialist Kennedy LaDon Sanders, her mother, talking to us tonight.
She never expressed any fear. And Tower 22 is nothing that she ever mentioned to us. She was full of life. She enjoyed life to the fullest. She was just a ray of sunshine for anyone that came in contact with her.
The soldiers were killed Sunday night at a small outpost in northeastern Jordan known as Tower 22, where about 350 U.S. soldiers and airmen are deployed. The Pentagon saying a drone packed with explosives hit near a housing area while many troops were asleep. At least 40 troops were injured, including 8 who had to be medevaced for further treatment. Tonight, Pentagon officials saying the drone flew in at the same time that a U.S. drone was also landing, possibly confusing the air defense systems. They're also looking at whether its low altitude was a factor. And now U.S. officials are considering whether this could be a new tactic by the militias. This weekend, President Biden vowing to respond.
We lost 3 brave souls in an attack on one of our bases, and we shall respond.
With me now to discuss is Kevin Barron, editorial director for Politico Live, and retired 4-star U.S. Army General Barry McCaffrey, a decorated combat veteran of Vietnam and a former battlefield commander in the Persian Gulf. General McCaffrey, let me start with you. This is the first strike to kill U.S. troops after months of attacks by Iranian-backed militants. None of the other attacks have been successful, but the U.S. has responded to those previous attacks. How should the response be different now than before?
Well, look, the Biden administration has been extremely careful about trying to prevent escalation of the conflict. Secretary Blinken's made the rounds of the Middle East multiple times now. Where are our allies, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Saudis, all remaining mute and trying to stay out of it? So it's a tough call for the president. I will say, though, that the distinction of over 160 attacks on U.S. forces, Red Sea, naval forces under attack, Iraq, Syria, and now Jordan, the distinction shouldn't be whether they finally killed some of our troops, but that we are under lethal regional warfare orchestrated by Iran. That's the challenge. So it can't be a proportional tit-for-tat response. They probably have to give more authority to the commanders on the ground to detect threats and attack them when they see them. But there's also diplomatic, economic, covert action, other tools that they'll try and bring into play also.
Quickly, General McCaffrey, then, would you say, obviously, the United States has not declared war, and the president has been very clear that he is trying to avoid that, but is the region already at war with us, given everything you just laid out?
Well, I think it's a very low-grade engagement by Iran using proxy forces. It's not just over the war by Israel in response to the 7 October brutal attack on their innocent civilians. It's larger than that. It's Iran trying to become the preeminent power in the region. The Biden administration tried loosening restrictions. The Saudis have a truce with Iran. That does not seem to have worked. So, again, the challenge for the Biden team, and they're very experienced, thoughtful people. What do we do now? It can't be more of the same. If we're not going to respond, we literally have to consider withdrawing from the Middle East and not having troops sit there as day in, day out targets.
Kevin, why are American troops in Jordan at all? What exactly is the mission there?
Well, one of the first missions is the ISIS war has never really ended, despite the proclamations of lots of politicians, including the president and the previous president. The United States has not left the region. What has happened, and we have a stark reminder of it, is that the drawdowns of the big wars, the Iraq War, Afghanistan War, and then the ISIS campaign to follow, those get a lot of press. What hasn't gotten a lot of press for the months and years since has been that the United States has kept troops in Iraq, in Syria, a couple thousand in Iraq, less in Syria, and not to mention all the other bases around the region the United States keeps with tens of thousands of troops and ships offshore for the purpose of keeping the lid on terrorism. And that's just been a constant mission across Central Command. So there have been small groups of special operations fighters going into Syria from Iraq for a long time, and those have been the targets of these attacks.